All right, it's 1 o'clock. I'm going to join this. I have to reboot my computer, so I will join the Zoom meeting once it reboots, but I will start the meeting anyway. So, call the meeting to order, sorry, for September 5th. We were just talking, Councillor Hughes and I, about kids back to school. We are back. After a bit of a summer break, although it's obviously we've been back at council, but it feels like fall today. And it feels like things really are going to start picking up in our council agenda, although not today, not a bad meeting today. So I will call the meeting to order. Attendance at the start of the meeting. I see Councillor Jolly online and everyone else is here in person. I need a motion. Councillor Mackay has already pushed his button. Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
Well, now that I am back into the cheap seats, I'll take on the other role. That September 5th, 2023 agenda be adopted as presented.
All right, call for the vote. Voting's closed and that passes unanimously. So Councillor Mackay, who approved the agenda last week? Was it just everybody who sat there stone faced, not knowing?
I gave up the chair.
Awesome. Okay, we do have 3 registered speakers, which is nice to see. So first of all, I have Trustee Rouse. Thank you for joining us. And you're here to speak about school sites. The microphone should be on. Do you have a slideshow or anything?
Sound like it's on?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Yeah,
Awesome. Great. So good afternoon. While it may be first day back to school, some of us are still holding on to summer for a little while longer, so hope you do as well. So good afternoon, Council. As you're aware from annual presentations that our board has made with regards to 3-year capital plans, and as well as other opportunities where we've had a chance to collaborate about mutual interests from both the school board and the community as a whole. Our board has school buildings, and in particular those at the high school level, to accommodate not only our increase in student enrollment and the rapid growth in population in our city. Those buildings are of urgent and critical need for us. We really appreciated acknowledgement of those needs and the discussion around the community amenities site and the notices of motion that came up at your August 15th council meeting. Also at that meeting, you'll remember that Mary O'Neill's concerns about traffic on Layden Drive touched on some of those impacts that schools have in our community's neighborhoods. And it also highlights the importance of strategic planning for size and location of schools. It is our sincere hope that school sites, including their selection, size, and servicing, are considered in your discussion today around your advocacy priorities. In the Premier's mandate letters to ministers issued this summer, included in the municipal affairs and education mandates were expectations to deliver on initiatives that are overseen by those respective ministries, including working to significantly increase the number of schools in the communities of greatest need, and in municipal affairs, direction to work with the Minister of Education and the President of the Treasury Board and Minister of Finance, reviewing the feasibility of amending the education property tax to assist municipalities with retaining more funding for local priorities. At the upcoming Alberta Municipalities Convention on September 28th, elected officials from member municipalities will have the opportunity to vote on resolutions sponsored by municipalities that identify and prioritize common issues and solutions and serve as calls to action by Alberta municipalities. Provided in your package today is one of those resolutions that will be considered on September 28th that is titled Infrastructure Servicing and Construction Costs of School Sites. And it reads, "It is therefore resolved that Alberta Municipalities advocates for the government of Alberta to ensure provincial allocations of capital funding for school construction cover all costs of construction, including the servicing of school sites with the required infrastructure." Our request today is for council to consider speaking to and voting in favor of this resolution on September 28th, and to possibly incorporate some of the considerations around school site planning and construction in ways that will align with your council's advocacy priorities. Our board has similarly sponsored a resolution to the Alberta School Boards Association that will be deliberated at our convention this fall in November. And we added an additional step, requesting that the Ministries of Education, Infrastructure, and Municipal Affairs work together with Alberta municipalities and our school boards to resolve some of the challenges that arise through the Municipal Government Act around lack of properly sized and available reserve land for school site allocations. We really empathize with the challenges and constraints municipalities are faced with right now, and we really are keen to actively work towards mutually beneficial solutions for the sake of our community's needs, and in particular, our students. So thank you for your support and for the opportunity to speak today.
Awesome. I'll start with just a little bit of process. So this council will get an Alberta municipalities briefing, I guess, from our administration coming up before the convention, probably next week or so, with all the resolutions and staff's recommendations to support or not support. Not going to presuppose what staff is going to say, but the Lethbridge resolution supported by Okotoks, I'm pretty sure they're going to say, please support. Yeah. So, and process wise, it's quite often difficult to get up and speak in favor of a resolution at our convention because they have mics that are labeled yes and no. So the mover will go up and say why their arguments are. And unless someone says something negative, then it goes straight to a vote. That's generally how, and I'm going to tell you, this is a really good motion. Most municipalities across Alberta are struggling with the same things, the servicing side. So it's probably going to get supported quite overwhelmingly. If someone speaks against, I'm sure I could send one of my council members or even myself running to the yes mic and say, please support. But I think it'll be an easy one to support. Met with Alberta School Boards Association actually on Friday as my role as president of the association. We did talk about this resolution and I think they knew you were coming here today. And we did talk about some of the challenges in getting pieces of land. I talked a little bit about how in some communities, the developers will actually accelerate the servicing the roads and the infrastructure to the school site because they want to build and then because it attracts home buyers. And then you'll get some developers who do the exact opposite and will drag their feet and not subdivide. So good conversations there. So thank you. I think it's really good to hear that you're bringing forward a resolution at your convention that really is similar because I think the government does need to hear that for sure. Any questions of Trustee Kroos? Go ahead.
I'll just add that I support Mayor Herron's comments, and I did pull the resolution out of the resolution book, and I see your resolution is attached as appendix. I'm pretty sure you guys have already identified it, if I know your superintendent. And it aligns with the Alberta Municipal Finance Strategic Initiative. So just to reiterate the mayor's comments, I don't believe that this will have any problem going forward. And if it does, Mayor Herron and I will fight for the microphone.
Yeah. I do believe that, if this passes and probably will, the association will start working on it. But there'll be a very big countermeasure from Build Alberta to talk about, they don't want to pay for servicing and stuff. Although that's generally what happens in a new neighborhood, but we'll see how it goes. I think everyone wants schools in this province. So yeah, I have nothing further for you. So thank you for coming. Okay. All right, next registered speaker, and hopefully I'm going to get this right. Lotto, and I'm going to say Brisick. Is that correct? Awesome. Come to the mic. Development concerns in Sturgeon, and you have, I'm assuming you were told us 5 minutes to speak, so go ahead whenever you're ready.
Correct. Okay, good. Thank you. Hey, my name is Vlado Brisick. I've been a resident of St. Albert for over 20 years. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me and to my concerns. The reason why I'm here is I'm trying to, or for the last year and a half, to subdivide a piece of property that I bought in the Sturgeon County or in the Sturgeon subdivision. To subdivide it, which falls in lines with the city of St. Albert's older neighborhood densification policy. I spent close to $500,000 in the last year and a half on this project in design fees, LOC drawings, etc., and with no return yet on my investments. I'd like everybody to know that I want to get along. I want to do this. I put every effort into trying to resolve this matter. I want to support my community. I want to do business in my community. And most importantly, I have always followed all of the policies and procedures provided to me through the city of St. Albert. The city of St. Albert is a policy-driven organization. Decisions are made purely, should be made purely on policies and procedures, so there is no question or suspicion on any personal bias in decisions. However, this appears not to be the case. The city of St. Albert is not applying its policies and procedures consistently and fairly to everybody. I applied and received a conditional subdivision approval, the CSA, on April 4th, 2022. It's now a year later and this is still dragging on. Approximately 7 months after I received the CSA, the city said I had to remove an unhealthy tree from the city boulevard to make way for a Fortis light stand. Fortis, the engineering consultant, PAL survey, all disagreed that this tree has to be removed. Decision was made by the by the community, excuse me, by the city of St. Albert is completely contrary to the terms of the CSA, the same CSA I'm mandated to follow, which means Section 8 of the policy of the CSA said that no trees are to be removed. And I was mandated not to do that. Yet the city is now mandating me to remove a tree from the city boulevard. And later I found out the city wants me to pay them $3,700 extra for this tree that they're going to throw away. The engineering consultant emailed the city and said, we asked Fortis if the tree needed to be removed, and they said no. It's only on there because the city asked for it. The engineering consultant, PAL survey, Fortis, all have said the tree does not have to be removed. And most importantly, item number 8, again, which is the CSA. The consultant also said, based on our drawings, we do not feel the tree needs to be removed. I contacted the city to try to resolve this matter as the supervisor for the engineering development said, it is essential to resolve the disagreement of the tree before we move forward. I also wanted to resolve this matter, but when I did contact the manager of engineering to discuss this, I was told flatly, this is a non-negotiable item. The price is $3,700. There's nothing to discuss. So basically, just go away. At one point, I was told by city staff, I feel this is the best option for you. And I didn't know that the city staff knew what was best for me. I was quite insulted when they told me that. I contacted the manager of development engineering services, and he agreed that the policy stated that it's a 3.5 meter setback. However, he said there still might not be enough room to fit the tree, the light pole where the tree is. And so he went on to say, looking at the space between the two large trees, the only way that this will work is for the middle tree to be removed. He said there's only 9 meters there. And I said, well, did you go and measure it? I didn't receive a response. So I actually went and measured it. There's actually 11 meters between the tree and the two trees, which now means, based on our conversation previously, that this will work. And I asked him, I said, well, will you reconsider? He said, no, they're not going to reconsider. As I was getting constantly changing the story, I contacted the director and asked her why the city was deviating from its own engineering standards. She responded, based on their collective experience and judgment. And I also said, well, where does judgment and collective experience fit in with the policy? The policy is purely, the decisions by the public organizations should be purely driven by policy and procedure, not by feelings and emotions. So again, it appears that it was being the CLC policy, City of St. Albert policy can be ignored and replaced with a collective experience. I was told many things by the city to convince me to choose their dictated option. That would 100% kill the.
Mr. Brisick, your the 30-second warning and your 5 minutes is up. I'll just give you a couple more seconds to wrap up.
Oh, it's already gone past. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
And again, I'm trying to be nice about all this. I finally went and no disrespect intended to anybody. I contacted the mayor and asked her you could assist in resolution of this. The mayor accidentally CC'd me on an email and said, to one of the managers said, all I really want is a response from the city, and so would leave him no other option to go away. I was shocked, and I said, it appears that they just want me to go away. A few days later, I contacted Fortisback and asked them if they would reconsider and meet me on site to go through and see if there's another option.
Mr. Brisick, your time is up. I think I'll let you know that council's we've seen some of the emails back and forth, and we've seen our administration response, but knowing you were here, we actually have, all the staff, in the room to help us get through this and navigate. So it's a question of a tree. To make room for a Fortis box. Or
No, a light standard.
Light center, that's it, sorry.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have to pay compensation when you take down a public tree. So I think we've got that. And I think one of the misconceptions that we've heard a couple of times is we do have engineering standards for sure when it comes to new
Correct.
areas, but we're lacking sorely in the engineering standards for infill, which is something that we're going to probably talk about and rectify in the future, so we can actually have some reason to say yes or no to these kind of questions. But I already see Councillor Hughes has a question, so I'm going to go to her first.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for coming. So I just wanted I know because you had ran out of time. What is your ask?
The ask?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Is that to follow through with option number one, which is the one that the Fortis had designed, which is viable, and it followed all the procedures from the MES and following IENS illuminating standards, and that fit within the parameters of all the city engineering policies, procedures.
and option number one is what is option number one? Since I don't
The
have
tree,
it.
the light standard it's going to be placed approximately 4.2 meters away from the tree. The city standard is 3.5 meters. However, I was told even at 4.2 or even at 3.5 meters, it's not good enough. So I asked why, if the standard is 3.5, why is the standard 3.5 if you're telling me 3.5 is not good enough now? Again, they just deviated from their own policy and procedure.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, what you're looking for is to be able to put the Fortis light box or the light post up without having to remove the tree.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming that staff have reviewed this in some capacity.
I'm sorry.
I'm assuming staff have reviewed this request. You also mentioned Fortis.
Yes.
So, and you said something about Fortis willing to meet with you.
Correct.
So, because I guess there's a discrepancy right now between what Fortis is, in your understanding from Fortis, and what the city thinks is the best way to go at this moment.
Correct.
So is there something you'd like to, I mean, the final say ultimately is the city. So I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to come up with specifically how we can come to a resolution here on this.
I think it can be probably worded. If the city just follows through with its policies, follows the policies and procedures that they have set in place, particularly the MES, the municipal engineering standards, which clearly state everything that we've done is correct. And the city employees who I've been dealing with have deviated from that and now want me to do something different, which is confusing to all of us because Fortis agrees with me. The engineer that I've hired agrees with me. PAL survey, they all agree that this should work and the tree does not have to be removed. We don't want to remove a tree. We're following with the CSA standards. The CSA, which is a conditional subdivisional approval, said no trees are to be impacted, and we do not want to remove a tree. But now I'm being forced to remove a tree, but not only being forced to remove a tree, I have to pay the city $3,700 for a tree that's going to be thrown away that I don't want to remove.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the bulk of it.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sheena. Thank you so much,
Oh, no.
Council.
All right, Councillor Urbanski also has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, and
Sorry.
thank you for coming to council today. I have a question. What were you advised from administration is the problem with the light fixture or post, whatever you want to call it, being, in that position? Is it just the factor that it's too close to the tree? And that was the only
Well, there's
concern?
Many things. They told me many things. One, it's too close, the tree will die instantly. The overhead wires are running through the trees, which is odd because this same wire runs through 15 trees down the street. And the same wire, if it's 10 feet away, 20, it's still gonna run through the same trees. The tree has to be bushed. There's not enough room. There's only 9 meters and there's actually 11 meters. There's one more thing that they told me, and I just can't remember off the hand. So every time I did something and it met the guidelines, I was told a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the discrepancy between the 9 and the 11 meters, was there ever a remeasure done or anything involving that?
I did.
You did?
I asked him to come with me to measure it. Nobody did. So I went and measured it. There's actually 11 meters.
Okay.
And I said, given that it's 11 meters now, will you reconsider your position? And they said, no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councillor Killick, you had a question. Now you're good? Good, okay. So there's no more questions from our council members. So this is how we do it here is now we have one more registered speaker. And then the next agenda item is called business arising from presentations. And so that'll give us on council a chance to ask our administration questions on resolution and their thoughts. So if you want to stick around, we'll have that conversation at the next agenda item.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
so much. Thank you very much.
All right, and we have just one last registered speaker, and it's Derek Shakora. Nice. Another tree question. Well, kind of the opposite though, so go
Everybody's
ahead.
favorite today.
Yeah. You have 5 minutes. You can start whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, council members and city administration. My name is Derek Chikora, and having been born and raised in St. Albert, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. Today, I'd like to speak to you about a tree that I believe may have been erroneously planted in the boulevard at 53 Acorn Crescent. Next slide, please. I purchased 53 Acorn Crescent with a possession date of June 1st, 2023 this year. And I would like to build a 750 square foot double garage with a suite above it in this location. Through my journey to obtain a development permit, the tree with the red arrow pointing at it, I believe it was the one that has been erroneously planted by someone back at the city in 1981. And recently, I've also been denied a removal of the tree, which I do not believe is reasonable. There have been several suggestions from planning and development on how this tree may be able to be worked around. However, with having to work with a 7-foot utility right of way on the left side of the yard and a 1.5 meter setback from either side of the tree, in addition to a minimum of 45-degree angles on driveway skirts and driveway angles, it is simply not possible to build this project with the tree in that location. I'd like to quickly demonstrate an above view. Next slide, please. Yeah. On the top picture, there is an overhead view of the lot with the tree to the right there of the top right-hand corner. And in the second photo below it is a copy of my area plan as presented by Planning and Development. They put this together to demonstrate to me what the problem was initially. And as you can see, the proposed structure and associated driveway just simply doesn't work real well with that tree currently in there. I'd like to quickly go over a timeline of how we got here today and what I'm looking for from council and administration. All the names have been removed from any of my emails, logs, and stuff like that. Because I'm not looking to drive the proverbial bus over anybody. It's just a matter of this is what I've been through to this point to get here. So make sure I'm on the right slide here. So between June 1st and June 5th, the incorrectly planted tree on the boulevard was identified as an issue and that other departments were having a look at it. Next slide, please. I don't think we're in the slide, or I missed something here. I somehow lost track of where I'm at. Okay, well, moving on anyways, the long and short of it is I had been in communication with planning and development, attempting to get resolution on this tree, as an invitation from them had stated to let's have a look at this first and make sure we got everything caught before you do your submission. So through the course of that, it was just identified that this tree was a problem, and I was eventually referred to Public Works to deal with the problem. And then once I have something in writing from Public Works, that we could then submit my application. Next slide, please. What you see up on the screen here has been my call log with the Public Works Department over the last 2.5 months. This particular page is from June 15th to August 3rd. And as you can see, I've made several attempts to try and contact folks over at Public Works to either meet, discuss the tree, try and come up with a mutually reasonable solution to this particular tree. When I was speaking with someone over at the team lead of trees at Planning and Development, he had mentioned that this particular tree was planned for a single driveway, and I had asked him what is the criteria to determine who gets a double driveway and who doesn't in the city of St. Albert, and I never did get a response to that particular question. And so next slide, please. There was a fair amount of back and forth and time trying to retrieve an answer for this particular tree. Ultimately, I was next slide, please. Ultimately, I was denied the tree removal, quoting the urban tree development policy. And I do not believe that this position is reasonable, and offered further questions for consideration. And to date, I have not received any responses to these questions. Next slide, please. I'm looking to find out what the city's official criteria is for granting an unobstructed driveway, as other members in the area have. And
Mr. Circle, that's your 5 minutes. So we'll get you to wrap up.
okay.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, what I'm looking for from the council today and from city administration is the application of the policies as they are written, and ensure that they are applied consistently across all residents of St. Albert.
Awesome.
Thank
So the big one is, what is the official position for single versus double driveways?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Cool.
Councillor Hughes has a question, as you heard, so we'll do council questions, and then we're gonna probably have some questions from our
Sure.
administration. So go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Hi, thanks for coming. I know it's daunting to come up there, right? Okay, so from what I understand, if I can just get this together, is that basically you can't put the driveway anywhere else, right? And could you just build in the current location and not affect the driveway? Would that be an option?
Unfortunately, not. The current driveway and whatnot is too far away from the house to allow for the construction of the proposed structure. With the minimum setbacks of being 15 feet on either side of that, combined with the utility right away on the left-hand side of the property versus the location of the tree, it's not possible to get everything to all fit together while acknowledging the minimum setbacks, angles in driveways, and all these good stuff that I've discussed at length with planning and engineering.
Okay, and I guess they've presented some solutions to your discussions earlier, and the options you gave when you vetted them. What was your conclusion after vetting the potential options to try to deal with this situation?
Oh, the conclusion was that the tree is just not appropriately placed, and that we won't be able to build the structure, unfortunately, which I believe would bring some value to both the city and to myself, where we would have some more tax revenue increased values in properties in the neighborhood, has up the overall value of properties within the area. Yeah,
Okay, so basically, like if the tree doesn't go down, this is not going to be feasible.
correct.
To
It
build
will
it.
be a non-starter with the tree there.
Okay.
It's just simply not financially viable
Yeah,
at that point.
okay. Because it does look like, the driveway has to be moved, you said, because of the setback requirements, correct?
Well, the driveway has to be moved to, yes, for the setback requirements for the proposed structure, yes.
Okay, and if you, because I'm looking at that tree where it is right now, and it's obviously too far or too close to the driveway to meet our current standards, period. So
Correct.
if you touch the driveway at all, does that affect the ability to do that tree?
It does, yeah. The moment I touch the driveway, I've been informed by planning and development that the tree would have to meet current standards, which is 5 feet or 1.5 meters away from either side. And in doing so, having a setback on either side of the tree shown in the picture here, along with the one to the other side, to the left of that, it doesn't leave enough room to put a driveway in that meets all the various angle requirements of skirting, driveway, etc.
Okay, so my understanding is that you do have a response, like a response in writing to the request about the tree, which is that it's been denied, right?
Correct.
And that, I know it went through quickly, but that you have to have a response in writing allowing it to occur, really to apply, because one of the emails that, I don't know, it was highlighted there,
Yeah, if I went back 2 slides, I think,
which was,
forward 2 slides, sorry.
so they,
Next slide.
I don't know where it was, but
There it is.
okay, so any decisions made by Public Works should be obtained in writing and submitted with an application. So really, you need to have an answer from Public Works prior to being able to apply.
That's correct.
And your answer was that it was being denied and there was no further consideration?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate listening, both the previous speaker and yourself. I know in your slides, you were going to show some examples, but when I drove by on the weekend and looked, and so your neighbor to the east
Yes.
just built a new home.
Oh, that one there, yes.
He's got a double car garage. Have you had any conversations with him, how he was able to achieve a double car garage or access from the same? I mean, if you look at his, it looks relatively new.
Yes.
And did he come up to any, or I'm assuming let's just say, did they come up with any problems or concerns? Do you know the history of their build?
I believe that their garage was an existing structure that was not dealt with the build of the house. The house was built in its existing footprint and they added a second story for it. And yes, I have spoken with them about my particular issues and whatnot. And yeah, he's actually a developer as well. They do this kind of work commercially, and that particular place is their showpiece. So yes.
Yeah. When you drive on Acorn Crescent, you've got a mix of single and also double a little bit here and there, right?
There is, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how that happened. I mean, obviously, when the trees were being put in or taken out, there must be some history of that. So I'm not saying to you, I mean, that'll be a question perhaps I'll ask administration later, but
Right.
I mean, you're in an older area. There's a lot of mix of double.
There is a lot of mix in the area. However, a lot of those properties and stuff like that with the single garages have been developed to have a single garage. In my particular instance, there was no development there, and the lot was essentially open, and the tree wound up there. When it's, in my opinion, fairly clear that someone may want to do something with the rest of this space at some point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. I mean, the example you have there is directly across the street from you and
It
they
is.
back onto Acorn versus coming onto Aikens Drive itself.
That's correct. Yeah, this is the corner lot directly across the street from 53
Yeah,
Acorn.
yeah.
And
Okay,
you can see the wide tree placement around their driveway, and they're on the side lot in a similar situation that I am.
right.
Hmm.
Okay, all right, thanks. I appreciate that. I mean, I look at your neighbor behind you and I've got notes and I've also got it up on Google Earth. I mean, where his driveway comes out, his tree is like right up against his driveway there.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Oh, we have Councillor Hughes has another question. Go ahead, Sheena.
Thank you. Just so you know, because I walked that area, Ken, that driveway was always there, so they didn't touch it, and so that's why the tree was like grandfathered in, because they didn't actually have to touch the driveway. I've walked that
Just
quite a
looks
few
like the
times.
apron's new.
But I think if you don't move it, it's not about repouring it, it's about moving it, right? So the other question I had is, was there any discussion about building like a smaller unit or a single garage on that location?
There was some discussion about that. Planning and engineering suggested that I may want to reduce the size and the footprint of my garage to be able to work around the tree. And go so far as possibly putting the stairwell to the second level on the exterior of the building in order to make the building footprint smaller, which then may be able to fit into the around the tree. And it's just not simply viable as an investment of considerable amount of money. I need to be able to rent the property for an amount that's reasonable. And if I make it smaller, it's as a single bedroom, small bachelor, maybe at best. It's just not viable to put that kind of money up front and not be able to get the return back out of it on rent.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Bermansky, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to see us today as well. I just have a question with the garage pad that's there. Was that poured at the time that driveway was put in place, or was it added further down? Or are you even aware of the history on that?
I honestly am not aware of the history on that. I purchased the property from the original owners.
Okay,
So I'm assuming that it was built with the house,
okay.
and it's purely assumption.
So you
I
don't
don't
know
know.
if it's a permitted space or anything then in the dimensions, or was that checked in your planning?
I'm sorry, I'm not clear on what you're
Like
asking.
the space that you're planning to build is directly on top of that pad? Is that how
It
you've
is
got?
not.
It's not?
For most of it is.
Okay,
However, I need to expand beyond what's there in order to facilitate the two-bedroom suite.
okay. And you're expanding more towards the house or equal on each side?
I have to go more on both sides, closer to the
So-
utility right away and towards the house.
So equal on each side then?
I don't know if it's equal. I can't say specifically. Based on, I did not compare, like in this particular drawing here, I did not compare the existing footprint versus the what's existing or what's proposed, sorry.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what's a reasonable rent for the size versus a smaller size?
I believe right now a two-bedroom suite with a garage should be easily $1,400 a month in St. Albert.
Okay, and then the smaller size would be substantially less, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
a single bedroom is going to probably be anywhere from 9 to 11.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, good questions, council. I have no questions. We're going to get to our staff and try to get some answers.
Sure.
Hopefully we could try to figure something out. I mean,
I would
garage
appreciate
suites
that.
is something I'm super excited about and supportive of. It helps with affordability. We need more rentals in this community and it helps with density. So it aligns with what we're trying to do. I just figure we need to figure out how to make it happen. So we're going to ask some questions of our administration, and probably one of them is we need some engineering standards for infill, which is the same issue that we had with the tree in question before. They're just not there and they're not clear. So we're going to get there at the next agenda item. So thank you for coming and trying to explain it, and appreciated the pictures. That really helped. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, business arising. Let's try to do this orderly. Pardon? Okay, so is there any questions of our administration on trustee Roos's presentation? That one was pretty straightforward. All right, let's go to the development in Sturgeon with Mr. Brisick's question about being asked to remove a tree. So who has any questions? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So I guess what I'm going to ask is just to kind of give us some kind of an answer, because this has been going on for a while. Has there been any remeasuring or reconsidering? Because if the understanding was it was 9 meters and now it's 11 meters, does that change anything? And has it been actually remeasured by the city and reconsidered?
Yep, thank you, Councillor. I'm going to send this over to Director of Engineering, Donnie George.
Good afternoon, Council. Through the Mayor, to Councillor Hughes. There has been measurement occurred, and one thing I want to add is the presenter references on the minimum standard that is in the engineering standard, about 3.5 meters. That is generally, as Mayor spoke about, is generally considered for planting of new trees. So there's also in the same standard, it says minimum tree setbacks can be adjusted by the city based upon the species and placement. So again, it references placement of a new tree. So where we refer to is existing trees, how we preserve it and how we take care of it is mentioned in Appendix E, which is also communicated back to the presenter. It's the 3 steps to tree preservation. So although it meets the minimum standards for placement of a tree preservation's 3 steps takes predominance in this particular case. So what the presenter presented is 3 options that were presented to city in terms of allocation of the Fortis pole. And then what city got approval for is option 3, which is the least impactful for the existing trees in place. So in terms of how the 9-meter setback has been met or not, that can be answered by John Reed. He's online. But that's my general answer to that question. Minimum setbacks have been met as per the engineering standard, but there's also a discretionary item there based on tree species and spacing. The 3-step tree preservation Appendix E needs to be applied for, which is what is considered in this particular case where the tree pole is suggested to be put near the biggest tree, the elm tree, where the critical zone to protect the tree comes into play. And that one doesn't meet the standard, which is talks about 1.5 times the diameter of the breast height of the tree, which works out to be much higher than the minimum setback standards referenced elsewhere in the standard. So I can pass this to John if he wants to add to the 9-meter setback measurements have been made or not.
Thank you, Donnie. And through the chair, Donnie is correct with the setbacks and whatnot, but also included is the size of driveways allowed to be in the area. So in our minimum size of driveways, we're looking at like 4.2 meters for 2 aprons with a separation of 2.5 meters between them. So adding that up, you're going over that 11-meter mark. And if you put that pole kind of in that location that he's requested and keeping the other tree, it doesn't allow for access to his actual property. So he's trying to cut off his own access by placing the tree there, by placing the pole closer to
Mayor,
the elm tree.
point of order.
Sorry, go ahead.
Point of order. I'm just wondering,
Can you not hear?
oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, thanks through the chair. So basically we're fighting for space along because he's on a bit of a curve there. So it's also kind of working against his favor on putting that pole closer to the tree. And as well as Donnie said, we've got major concerns of losing that tree if we put the light pole too close to it. It's valued at $27,000 versus the $3,700 tree. So we're really trying to save the city and our assets that are actually existing. And giving the option of putting the pole where that other tree is gives them both the accesses to both properties, as well as gives access or keeps that pole in a location that will allow everything to go forward in the best possible case.
Okay, so I'm just because I'm trying to picture stuff. So what you're saying is that the other recommendation would be to put it very close to a tree of larger value. And you're saying take out the other tree and put it in that location instead. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
And if you were to put it closer to the tree of larger value and that tree were to die, then it would be considered his liability because it was
Potentially, yes.
close?
Yeah.
So you're saying we don't want to risk that and we're just going to take out the lesser value tree. Is that your position?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And the 9 versus 11 meters does not change that situation?
It does not in any way, shape, or form.
If he wanted to say, I'm willing to risk it and say, I want to put it closer to the higher value tree. If it does die, it's on me, like I'm rolling the dice. Would that ever be a consideration?
From our discussions internally, the city does not want to take that risk. We do not want to lose that mature elm tree to preserve a smaller value tree at this stage.
Okay. And when someone has to pay money to have the tree removed, what is the understanding for why we're charging a certain value for the tree? What happens to that money that comes to the city for that?
I can pass that off to Erin. That's not my area, from public operations. I think she's online as well, and she can answer that one.
Go ahead, Erin. And we can't hear you. It doesn't look like she's muted. Maybe a headset? We'll wait. Yeah. No, you might need to go into your audio section and choose a different microphone. Am I right, Sean?
Are
There
there
we
some like
Okay, say something again. Oh, you had it.
any better?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna hold it up against my mouth. Sorry. So basically, from public operations perspective, we don't want any of the trees removed from our tree canopy. Obviously, that impacts our urban forest significantly. If the decision is made through the processes that have been outlined before, any money taken for that tree removal will then be applied to tree planting elsewhere in the city, ideally as close to the location removed as possible.
All right, thanks, Erin. Another question, Councilor
Just, yeah,
Hughes?
I have one
okay,
more
go ahead.
question. So I'm looking, when you look at all the mature neighborhoods, that there's a lot of trees that are close where it would no longer remotely be close to our current standards, both infill or otherwise, and the trees are still surviving. So I guess I'm wondering the rationale I realize that this tree is considered a high value tree at the price it is, but we're also saying we want higher than the minimum standards of that's kind of been grandfathered in all over the cities. We've just seen with the photos of the previous speaker, right next to driveways, et cetera. So I'm just trying to understand the rationale for saying that we can't take that risk, that we actually think the likelihood is that it's actually going to be killed, because I'm just seeing a lot that aren't. And for this gentleman's concerns, I think we need to explain why the grandfather would be okay, but that this one has a higher standard.
I'll defer to Ms. George again. Perhaps I'll take an initial answer to that. I think, from a grandfathered perspective, we can't control what came before. We can only control what's here and now and moving forward. Certainly based on the best assessment, there is risk to a very significant mature tree, and there are other options. If there were no other options, this would be a different discussion. And that is really the premise going forward. So working to maintain and improve our approach going forward without an understanding that things were done in the past that none of us can control and certainly don't conform to what we understand now. Donnie, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Hughes, what is existing today was done as per the standard of the day, which we can't go back and change anything. So when any new application comes in for an infill, and which is the case here, when the new tree is planted, it established. I'm in no means expert in tree, but it establishes its roots around our obstructions. In this particular case, we are having a ground penetration to install this light pole, which is basically, although it meets all the minimum standards, it's still within the protected critical root zone of this big mature tree, which is also in the standard that we have to comply. So that's where this decision comes in. Okay, let's go with the least impactful option for our canopy, which means move the light pole to a lower valued asset tree versus the big tree that is in question, which is costing, like John said, it's in the range of $27,000 versus $3,700 for the small tree.
Thank you.
Okay, still more questions. Councillor Killick.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, to administration. There's a lot of numbers were thrown around, trees, light poles, all that kind of good stuff. Sounds like a fairly complex scenario. But bottom line, it sounds like we have given the landowner a solution that is workable, and it just really coming down to agreement on price of removing that small tree that's kind of sits in the middle of his property. So as I understand it, we're not saying no. We want infill. We want canopy retention of our most, the largest trees in that neighborhood, which are beautiful. And the solution is just a removal of a much smaller tree at a cost of $3,700. So I just want to make sure that we are not saying a blanket no. We're just saying here is a solution and it costs $3,700. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions on the second presenter? Councillor Jolly, you're good? Okay. All right. And some of this, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I guess I should have followed up. My apologies. The second question then is, and that has been clearly communicated, that solution has been clearly communicated to the landowner in writing, so he has that as a clearly communicated path forward. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
And just a further question, process-wise, probably to Marta, if council disagreed with the decision of administration, we would require a council motion, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so, along the same lines of trees, I guess I have a question, just a general question, because both of these are talking about infill, talking about boulevard trees. Are we working on some sort of engineering standards that maybe take into account some of our goals on density, affordability, that kind of conversation, because it's a priority for council. For engineering standards for infill, I guess is kind of that may be slightly different for new builds.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Your Worship. Obviously, the infill strategy is a significant endeavor that's ongoing. I'll defer to Ms. George to comment. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct. Just to follow up with what Bill stated, infill strategy will direct the next step forward in terms of how we can accommodate and be affordable in terms of everything tree related when it comes to infill engineering standards.
And perhaps I could say just, that very few absolutes in life in the sense. And I think the concept of the infill standard will be to preserve, in particular, as we talk about trees, preserve our canopy, but also be able to encourage infill construction, different housing forms, other options in terms of our mature established neighborhoods. And there will always be a balance and trade-off there. And that's the work that's occurring right now, is to define what those would be.
And I feel, Mr. Fletcher, that conversation might need some council input, because as we know, trees are the #1 priority of every one of our satisfaction surveys, and we do so much to continue to preserve that canopy. But at the same time, we have other priorities when it comes to infill and density and affordability. So I think we might need to have in the future, some sort of committee of the whole, some sort of workshop about how do we balance these, in these two examples, conflicting priorities, trees and infill. So we need to get there, because this is causing confusion in our public and who are trying to do some interesting things in our community. Oh, more questions. Councillor Hughes, are they still for the second? Third. Okay, so we're moving on to the third presenter, which is somewhat similar. Okay, I'll get you to start asking questions.
Hi, okay, thank you. So the impression that the gentleman has is that if he were to submit an application, that it would be denied for a double driveway as it stands, because the tree was not going to be removed according to what he has. Is that correct? Or is there still the opportunity to, nobody wants to remove trees, like it's like a precious item in our city. But if he were to submit an application, is there still the opportunity for it to be approved? Because I really don't want to put out thousands of dollars of all these different applications, plus all the other requirements just to come back with the same answer or to say that there really isn't going to be a change because you've given it to you in writing already.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Again, I'll ask Donnie George to comment, but what I would say is there has been no concrete decision made on that issue. And so with a plan coming in, it could well result in the removal of that tree. Ideally, we would work with other options to try and preserve the tree as a first instance. That's always the approach. But that is not to say that the tree could not be removed, should that be the only mechanism to enable what is being done. Donnie?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, that's exactly right. We still have to receive a formal application in this case, and I understand the applicant is trying to find options if, before putting the application forward, if this tree has to stay or not. Like Bill said, our fallback position is to follow City Council policy on the urban forest management. No removal of tree will be our first option, and then we'll usually worked with previous applications in Grandin and other areas where we had to split the driveway to go around the trees. That may be an option, but again, if that comes with a huge price to the applicant, then we'll work with the applicant to see if there's exhaust all options to keep it. If not, tree removal will be the last option, which will accompany with a compensation to the city to have it, planted elsewhere.
And perhaps I could just follow up. Obviously, resident was told that he needed something in writing before being able to initiate a plan. We will clarify that with him to ensure that in fact he can move forward on this and let him know what the options are to assist.
So if I hear you correctly, the recommendation would be to the applicant or to the gentleman to apply, and that we're going to work with him as much as possible, try to make sure that we can accommodate the double garage. And if necessary, we will remove the tree, but we will look at all the other options first. Is that what I'm basically hearing?
Through the chair, yes. Yeah. We need to see the application first and work with the applicant.
Right. And obviously, if he has to remove the tree, then there'll be discussion with the value of it. But
that'll be the last option. Yeah.
Okay. So his impression that he can't, that the tree is now will be an impetus to development isn't the case. That is just simply a consideration, and it'll be our last consideration. But we will still be trying to make sure that the infill can occur. Is that correct?
That's correct. We work with all applicants as it comes. And John, if you'd like to add anything in particular to this application, please go ahead.
Thank you, Donnie, and through the chair. There's nothing more to add. We're willing to work with them, but there is a cost to those trees, and I don't know what that value is, but that could end up being more costly than other measures that might be available to them. So it's best that they kind of review their options first before kind of proceeding. But like I said, with the last question was a $27,000 value for an elm tree, and something could be that valuable. And we've had other neighborhoods or other infills in the area that have gone with trees with a much larger value than that as well. So just be cognizant that there are costs associated with all of that.
Okay. I guess the other question I had is, I realize that we have the value of the tree consideration. The other consideration I'm just wondering is our flexibility about the fact that the tree is located directly in front of where a second driveway would be. Like, we're not expanding to a third or fourth driveway. This is a double driveway, is not unusual standards. So is there any consideration for flexibility in light of the fact that the tree is basically blocking the ability for a second driveway to go in, period? Or would that, I know you guys are going to have discussions about it. I'm not asking you to come up with a firm answer. I'm just asking if there's any, is it like firm standard no matter what? Or would there be some consideration, at least into the total compensation cost, into removing a tree that was placed in a place that really impedes development?
I would offer that I don't think I can give you an answer to that question right now. There are probably many trees placed in the past that could impede development if someone decided to do that. So that might be a can that
Sure.
ought not to open, right? And I think perhaps a uniform approach would be best, but that's my initial thought. We have not discussed it.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just let it go and let you guys settle it up and figure out a solution. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to figure out some kind of way to make sure that this can move forward, and we'll do it in a fair fashion. So thank you for that. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, Councilor Massey, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. And it's related to the trees in both locations, I
Okay.
guess. Can the $3,700 tree, if removed, would it be sacrificed or planted somewhere else?
I would let Erin answer that. straight answer is we'll be planting somewhere else close to the vicinity. But Erin, go ahead.
Okay, and in
For,
the.
for the most part, though, the trees that are in there are of a size or of an age that they would not be transplantable. If that's what you're asking, Councillor Bermansky, it would be a replacement value. So say a $4,000 tree value would equate to approximately 4 trees planted elsewhere in the area. So you're trying to replace that lost tree canopy.
Right. Okay, so what's the size limit that you can replant it somewhere else?
That purely depends on species,
Okay.
the site that it's growing in, whether you can actually get a tree spade big enough to get down into there to get enough of the root ball out to be able to transplant it, and the health of the tree.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I see no more further questions on any of this. So, Mr. Fletcher, specifically with the last two speakers, will we do some follow-up?
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, perhaps starting at the third speaker, yeah, we will do that follow-up. I think the message is absolutely happy to work to get the plan submitted so that we can work through that component of it. Obviously, just again, to highlight that removal of the tree is generally considered as the last option. So ideally, before submitting a concrete plan, that's been taken into account. In terms of the second component, respectfully, we're not in a position where we would change our best advice and decision on this short of a council motion.
Okay, so I will follow up with that then, with that clarification. Okay. All right, moving on in our agenda, business arising consent agenda. We had one item pulled from consent, which was 7.4 FCM non-board member, which was a good catch, Councillor Jolly, because we need to 100% figure out how to fund it. We added to consent the cancellation of the September 12th meeting. And then there was some confusion about Councillor Killick's questions on the master rates. It could go either way. It could be pulled off consent or asked at the end of the meeting, because we don't have to actually submit any motions until next week, I think it is. We won't pull it off consent. We'll do first reading on consent and you can ask your questions at the end of the meeting. So can I have Councillor Hughes is jumping on the consent agenda? Go ahead.
This side of the board likes to do all the early motions,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay, so the recommendations, yeah, we go for the wins, right?
There
I
should
can't be
should have
guaranteed
made it
anything
like
else today.
a competition this whole term.
All of us. I got two fast guys, the premature button pushers here. That the recommendations, the following agenda reports be approved. 6.1, regular council meeting minutes of August 29th, 2023. 7.1, public tax sale. 7.3, cancellation of September 12th, standing committee of the whole meeting. And 8.1, bylaws, policies that affect fees and charges, bylaw 1723 and CFS 16, first reading.
All right, I will call for the vote on that. Voting's closed and that passes unanimously. So 6.1 was the minutes from August 29th, 2023 approved on consent. I will note that I asked administration to clarify that Deputy Mayor Mackay was the chair of that meeting because it was not explicit. So that will be a quick addition to the minutes, but we didn't feel it needed to be pulled off consent for that. The public tax sale, which just sets the date for those 4 properties to be put up for sale unless no other arrangements can be made, was set on consent. 7.2 is advocacy priorities. I'm going to turn it over to Monty Kilo, advisor of government affairs or government relations, to take us through our advocacy priorities. Oh, Trevor, you're here. We've got Monty listed.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'll just provide some introductory comments before turning it over to Mr. Kilo, if that's okay. As council's aware, prior to the Alberta Municipalities Convention each year, council reviews and sets their advocacy priorities to advance the city's interests to other orders of government. So Mr. Kilo is here today to speak further to that, but really the intent of this report is to focus on high-level themes and priorities. So should council wish to discuss more detailed tactics and actions, is recommended council move in camera, and I'll turn it over to Monty.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Monty Killo, Government Relations Advisor, and I'm here to give a brief overview on Council's 2023-2024 advocacy priorities that are now before you for approval, as provided in Attachment 1 of the Agenda Report. So Council's advocacy priorities are initiatives that are impacted by or rely on decisions of other orders of government. For example, the amount of provincial funding available for capital projects is directly related to the Government of Alberta's funding allocations for the new local government fiscal framework. So each year, Council reviews their advocacy priorities to ensure that they reflect the most up-to-date needs and priorities of St. Albert. Part of this review is to prioritize a handful of these priorities to receive status as Council's top advocacy priorities. So although all advocacy priorities listed in the attachment will be worked on, Council's top advocacy priorities will be more foundational in messaging and in supporting strategies, and they will be prioritized in their implementation. So as part of the facilitated discussion we had at the August 22nd Standing Committee of the Whole meeting, Council identified Lakeview Business District Servicing and Provincial Municipal Revenue Sharing as their top advocacy priorities for 2023-2024. Just a quick overview on those. Lakeview Business District will stimulate economic diversification, job creation, and will support the development of West St. Albert. It's also one of Council's top strategic priorities. And funding assistance from other levels of government for the infrastructure servicing of Lakeview is needed to get Lakeview ready for private investment and facility construction. So the other priority, that's Council's top priority, is provincial municipal revenue sharing. So as St. Albert continues to grow, it is critical that the Government of Alberta provides adequate, stable, and predictable funding through its new local government fiscal framework, and that other revenue sharing mechanisms are explored to ensure that St. Albert receives the support it needs from the province to fund capital infrastructure projects, some of which are key to sustainable and continued growth. So Council has also reviewed and agreed that the other initiatives listed within Attachment 1 are to receive advocacy work. So this concludes my brief presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Councilor Broadhead, you popped up and then you went away. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Kilo, appreciate this is basically a reiteration of what we went through at the SCOW meeting here a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that we had talked about was I just providing council with some elevator speech notes when we run into various ministers, and with the Alberta Municipalities Convention coming up at the end of the month, will we have those ready for us so that, you know, if you ride an elevator, you should have an elevator speech, right? So, for example, I was talking to Minister of Municipal Affairs. I would have some targeted statements that we all have so we can speak consistently when we talk. Are those going to be available?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they will be available prior to the Alberta Municipalities Convention. You'll probably receive them around the same time you'll receive the briefing on the resolutions package for the AB Munis Convention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Romanski's jumping to a motion. Do we have any more questions before I go there? Councilor Jolly, you're good? I have a question of council. Who's attending the Alberta Municipalities Convention this year? 1, 2, 3. Councilor Jolly, you able to go with your work? Probably harder.
Probably not.
Okay, so we'll have some good representation there because there is a lot of opportunity to meet a lot of ministers, especially with the bear pits and stuff. Yeah, and it's in Edmonton, so it's super simple this year. Okay, Councilor Romanski, I'll go for your motion.
Thank you, through the mayor. That the 2023 council advocacy priorities provided as an attachment to the September 5th, 2023 agenda report entitled 2023-24 council advocacy priorities be approved.
Awesome. Do you have any opening comments on this?
The only comment I had is, I mean, we discussed this in through committee and there's always lots of things that we're advocating for, but you know, our business park is very, very important to us. And the funding from province sort of funds everything else that we're looking forward to. So I think it's a great start for everything.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? I see that Councillor Bermansky heard the call to get more motions on this side of the table. and
Yes,
got there
yes.
right away.
It was tough getting ahead of the two of them.
You know, we had a conversation quickly this morning about this probably should have been on consent because we did talk about it a lot. But we were doing the dot voting and this is the final result. So I thought it might be an opportunity to maybe debate the final result, but I see no debate, so I'm happy with it. Mr. Kilo, I hope you are also at Alberta Municipalities Convention. I think that would be a good opportunity for you to break into some of the advocacy stuff. And so I'm seeing a nod from everyone, so that's excellent. So I will call for the vote, I guess. Voting's closed. That passes unanimously. The next item was on consent. We have canceled the standing committee of the whole meeting for September 12th due to very small number of items on the agenda. So we spread them out into October and later. So that is done. And now we are going on to, this was also on consent. The policies, bylaws that affect fees and charges. So that's bylaw 17, 2023 and CF 16. So the motion read that bylaw 17, 2023 be a bylaw to amend the master rates bylaw and various other bylaws under which fees, rates and charges are set be read a first time. And that the revised version of Council Policy CFS 16 municipal fees and charges titled revised version CFS 16 municipal fees and charges attached to the agenda report entitled above be approved. So that second and third reading will come soon. And as you guys noticed in the backgrounder, to incorporate any changes, there was a deadline of, what was the deadline? I can't even remember. Yes, September 15th. So, and I think Councillor Killick has some questions related to that, but first reading is fine. All right, now we are going on to the very last agenda item. Sorry. Oh, the FCM thing. Yes. So Councillor Jolly pulled it off and gave us her reasoning why. So I appreciate that. So Marta has drafted up a new motion. So do you want to put it up for us, Marta?
Sure. We'll just put up all of the motions. So what?
Okay.
We're just, the motions that were in there are on the screen right away here. And then we also added a funding source to pay for the incremental costs associated with the attendance at the FCM meetings.
So I will read, sorry, that the following Federation of Canadian Municipalities resolution be forwarded to FCM. Whereas, okay, so this was all included in our backgrounder, right?
Correct. And then at the very end, we added, we can't even see it on the
Yes.
screen there.
Be it further resolved that 10,000 be added to Mayor Herron's other travel and general expense budget for from the stabilization reserve to pay for the incremental costs associated with Mayor Herron attending the FCM Board of Directors meetings from October 23 to June 24. Questions of either myself or administration? Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, isn't there something already in our remuneration policy that if a member of council serves on an FCM board, they're allowed $4,500? Councillor Osborne had that.
Councillor Osborne had it through council motion.
Yeah, but I think it's in the council remuneration.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Mackay. So I did look at that wording specifically right in preparation for this meeting today. And it says that if someone is a board member of FCM, then they get the 4,500 extra. However, this is a special motion because Mayor Herron will no longer be a member of the board. So she needs approval to be a special non-board member of the committees of FCM. So the $4,500 does not apply in that instance. She'll be a non-board member.
So to give you a quick little background, I sit on the board of Alberta or FCM right now because I'm the president of Alberta Municipalities. After September 29th, I will no longer be the president. So I emailed Scott Pierce, who's president of FCM, and said, I will no longer be on the board, but can I continue with my committees? And he said, absolutely, I just need this motion. And so now we need to fund it. I'm not 100% sure if a community member goes to advocacy days in December, and then there would only be one other board meeting before the convention in Calgary in June.
So that's where that time frame ends in June of 2024,
Right.
because that's when your committees would end.
And because FCM elects a whole new board and assigns new committees after the convention. Yeah. If I was to run for the board in Calgary next year, which I'm considering, then the policy would cover that.
Correct.
It's a weird one. It's just the difference between Alberta municipalities and, yeah. Councillor Bermansky.
Thank you through the mayor, and the question is for you as well. The $10,000, if you were placed in that position, I know it was temporarily mentioned through Alberta municipalities. So that funding would have been provided through Alberta municipalities. Otherwise, the 10.
Yes, so for the last 8 years,
Mhm.
Alberta municipalities has paid for all my Alberta municipalities conventions, et cetera. And for the last 2, they paid for all my FCM expenses, including convention.
Okay, and then the other question I had is, will there not be a representative from Alberta municipalities, or will they get the funding additionally to you getting funding from the city?
The next president of Alberta municipalities will be on the board.
Okay.
And because he or she has missed the committee assignments, probably won't sit on any committees. Because committee assignments are already out. I already sit on 2.
So you're just wanting to finish out your committee service is what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And you had some other questions. Do you want me to answer them now?
Sure, they were just interest, but
I don't know if I can answer all of them.
Okay.
So how often do members of FCM board change? That's annually. So that's every year they elect a new board. Who is the longest serving member of the board? I actually probably don't know for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of long serving members of the board. Is there always a representative from AB Munis? Yes, the president's automatically from all the provincial territory associations is automatically on the board of FCM. Board of FCM is like 75 people. It's crazy. So Alberta has the president of Alberta municipalities, the president of rural municipalities, an Edmonton rep, a Calgary rep, 2 urban reps, which are the Mayor Penhold right now and Councillor Katie Berghofer from Strathcona, and 1 rural rep, which is Neil Como from Sturgeon County. So we have 7-ish reps just from Alberta. Is the global covenant of mayors comprised of different individuals than the dedicated board? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the global covenant of mayors. But not everyone on FCM board is a mayor. There's councillors and mayors. It's a mix.
okay, it just showed under the FCM that there was that group that focused on international advocacy.
Oh, okay.
And so I was wondering if it's just comprised of mayors that sit on the board already, or if it's a different group.
It's not just mayors. You can be a councillor as well.
Okay, even though it's called mayors.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And then how many committees exist under the banner? I think there's probably, and I don't have to tell you the truth, I sit on 2, but I think there's probably about 8 of them.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? You want to make the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Jolly, go ahead. And
No, thank you. So this is probably an easy question for you, but what value does this bring for St. Albert?
Oh, gosh, Councillor Jolly. So last year I sat on the the environment committee and the international committee. This year I've been assigned to community safety and crime prevention, which I'm excited about. I expressed an interest. So you have to express interest and they take people with some skill sets. So I'm excited about talking about the policing contract, which obviously affects the St. Albert with RCMP and community safety in general. And then my other committee is the Anti-Racism and Equity Committee, which if you were at FCM in Toronto last year and you attended they'll have sessions. They had some fantastic models of anti-racism policies that municipalities can adopt. So I would like to learn about those and then hopefully bring them back to St. Albert.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
All right. Oh, another question, Councillor Matsky?
Yes, thank you. I think you somewhat answered my question in what you just mentioned to Councillor Jolly, but you mentioned bringing things back to St. Albert. Are you able to advocate on behalf of St. Albert, or do you represent council in your voting on FCM, or do you just go there to be educated and bring those ideas back to St. Albert?
No, there's definitely decisions made at the board level, and committees make recommendations to the board.
Okay, would council know about those prior and have a say in them, or would it just be done at the committee level and we wouldn't really know what you're advocating?
I can
on
I can easily give a more wholesome report, if that helps.
But there wouldn't be a council vote or anything then?
No, you can't bind any member, like you couldn't bind Councillor Broadhead on his CUDA decisions, can't bind me on
Right,
EMRB decisions, those
Same,
kind of things.
yes.
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Broadhead, go ahead. There's a whole bunch of whereases.
Here we go. I move that, thank you, that the following Federation of Canadian Municipalities resolution be forwarded to FCM. Be resolved that Council of the City of St. Albert endorse Mayor Heron to serve as a committee member on committees of FCM Board of Directors for the period starting in September 2023 and ending in June of 2024. And be it further resolved that Council assumes all costs associated with Mayor Heron attending FCM's Board of Directors meeting, and it be further resolved that 10,000 be added to Mayor Heron's other travel and general expenses budget from the stabilization reserve to pay for the incremental costs associated with Mayor Heron attending FCM's Board of Directors meetings from October 2023 until June 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. I'll accept that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is a good motion. I certainly support you finishing out your committee commitments. It's always nice to be part of a working group to further the interests of Canadian municipalities, and to stop halfway through certainly isn't appropriate. And so I appreciate you continuing to want to finish out your appointment, and I'm glad that the city here will, and I'm sure council will support it as it goes forward.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to get clarification for one thing, because I don't want the public uproar about something that's not that. So I know we're saying up to $10,000, but if you only have 2 meetings, it's very likely you'll be well under budget, right? So just so people don't think that we're spending $10,000 on 2 meetings, it's just an allocation because we had to put a number on the screen.
Completely likely that it'll be well under.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be in Yellowknife next week. That's all been moved virtual, so it's a freebie. So yeah, it happens. Yeah.
Okay, just so people don't think that we're putting $10,000 into something when it's probably going to be significantly less. Thank you.
Anything to close, Councillor Broadhead?
Nothing further, Madam Mayor.
I can't see the screen of Councillor Jolly has her hand up, but no, good. Okay, call for the vote. Voting's closed, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, council. I did go out of order because the next thing was 8.1, the bylaws on fees, but now we are on to 10.1. Councillor Jolly, it's a motion from you on Fountain Park Recreation Center. I'll get you to read it in.
Okay, I'm going to read the alternative provided by administration. So that is that the service level adjustments approved by council for the 2021 operating budget regarding closing Fountain Park Rec Center on stat holidays be amended to restore holiday hour operations on 5 additional stat holidays, including Good Friday, Easter Monday, Heritage Day, Christmas Eve, and Boxing Day, effective January 2024.
Perfect. All right, before I take the motion, I'll open it up to questions. Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thanks. So Councillor Jolly, I'm just wondering, they had in the backgrounder about starting it even as early as Thanksgiving time. So would you consider moving it up, or what was your rationale for keeping it until January?
I'm happy to move it up. I was just working with, I know it's been challenging with staffing, so didn't want to push that if it was an issue.
So to staff, if we were to have it effective October 1st, would that be an issue to be able to accommodate the staffing needs?
We would have to rework our schedules, but apart from that, it could be done.
You know, you know what I want to do, Councillor Jolly, is I'd like to just not do it as a friendly and say effective October 1st, 2024. So
I'm happy. You know what? I'm happy to do it friendly. Let's just go for it. October 1st.
Okay, thanks.
All right, okay, Councillor Kill, go ahead.
I must admit, I'm really torn on this one. We've spent all this money on building or rebuilding a beautiful facility at Fountain Park, but on the same note, we had a detailed discussion around how we could save budget dollars that was driven by input from administration, which said we could actually get by closing Fountain Park Pool on these days. My question is Service Place Pool open that could during these days that are being proposed to be closed at Fountain Park, so that swimmers still have a place to go? Or are we saying both are closed?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We've got our Director of Recreation and Parks online. So Danielle Podlubny, I'll turn it over to her.
Through the chair to Councillor Killick, the only 2 days that Landrex Water Play Center at Service Place is closed is on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. All other days of the year it is open. So Landrex Water Play Center would be open those days for use of the public.
Okay, so we're not leaving the public without access to recreation pool facilities if this was to remain closed as originally proposed.
You are correct.
Yeah, and I tried to find the backgrounder when we had our original budget discussions, but the simple comment in this backgrounder was that it's underutilized. Fountain Park is underutilized on these days, so it wouldn't be there's not a big demand for use on these particular days. Even with the backgrounder as is, it's only recovering about a third of the cost. So if it was open, what kind of utilization are we actually looking at?
Through the chair to Councillor Killick, it is some of our lower utilization days. We're still trying to understand the trends as we return from COVID. So through COVID, we experienced a number of closures. And then of course we opened our pool and then closed down fairly shortly after for a significant closure of time. I guess the one thing we really don't have good data on is to understand what the usage on those dates is in the new world post-pandemic and what that looks like. But it typically and historically before this was put forward, it was some of our lower utilization days. So that's why those dates were put forward as opportunities to have some cost savings as a corporation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Bermatsky.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'd like to know if I could put a friendly amendment through, directing to Councillor Jolly to omit Christmas Eve and Good Friday from the list. Reason being is it's trying to find a balance between the two, like the cost savings and the usage. And to have staff, committed to Christmas Eve with no one there. And Good Friday is the only stat holiday. Easter Monday, government.
So Councillor Bermansky, I'd say no, and I can say why in debate comments if that works for you.
Okay, so process wise, not friendly. So easy for you to propose a amending motion.
I would
will
like to
debate
do
it.
that then.
Okay, so what will the motion read?
Okay, here.
It sounds like you want to say, you move that Councillor Jolly's motion is amended to remove Good Friday and Christmas Eve, those.
Yes, Christmas Eve and Good Friday.
Okay. All right, I'm sure Ledge can word that correctly.
I've got it here now.
Okay, before I accept any debate arguments on why you want to do that, I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Mackay's question on the amending motion only.
Yeah, just to administration, what would you anticipate our hours to be on Christmas Eve? Like when would a normal closure be? Would it close still at like earlier, like 4 p.m. Pardon me?
Danielle?
I'll ask Director Rec and Parks to jump in again as I see her madly thumbing through her pages.
Through the chair to Councillor Mackay. So typically our facilities are closed at 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and we would fall in alignment with that on Christmas Eve at Fountain Park. So we would be open normal start operating hours till about 3 p.m.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just talking about Christmas Eve day, like, so December 24th. We're not like talking about when
A midnight swim.
when, when Santa Claus comes down. Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right. I see no further questions on the amending motion, so I'll accept it. Go ahead, Councilor Vermansky, on your debate.
Thank you. Again, trying to find balance between the cost savings and usage. It's, it's been indicated by administration that on these particular holidays, particularly and we know that from, working in the industry, those of us that have Christmas Eve, there's no business, at all, except for last minute grocery shopping. And the same on Good Friday. It's a family time. And I feel that the only thing that this is doing is costing the city, additional funding for a usage time that in history has not been a usage time, and at the same time, just taking away from the few holidays that, your staff that work in these situations would actually have. In comparison, Heritage Day, Boxing Day, the other holiday mentioned, everything's lively and everyone's out and doing things, but I'm trying to respect the family time of the staff that would be probably the ones most affected by this. Remain with some cost savings by saving a couple holidays and dedicating the opening doors for people on the days that people will probably use the pool more.
All right. Anyone else on debate on the amending motion? Councilor Jolly, go ahead.
Thank you. So the reason I'm not taking this as friendly is because, like Danielle was talking about, I think it's important to have our hours aligned at Fountain Park and at Service Place in Grosvenor when it's open, so that people understand, hey, I want to go swimming, and they don't have to think about the facility they're going to. We really aren't going to understand those trends unless we have consistent schedules across our facilities. This change was very recent, only in the last couple of years. So this is restoring something that was in place in St. Albert for a long time. I know from being a lifeguard working on stat holidays, it was never an issue to get staff on stat holidays. Many of the permanent staff take those days off, but many of the hourly staff are thrilled to work those days. And also, for how much we invest in aquatics, it's expensive to run aquatics facilities. Because we make that investment, we should make it available to use whenever our community can use it. A friend of mine commented recently that she's amazed how much time we spend debating, $3,000 for this motion compared to $15 million we won't say anything about. And that's really what we're talking here is, less than $3,000, and it opens up a facility to be in line with our other facilities and provides a service that we are definitely paying for. So that's why I'd like to keep them aligned. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bradhead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the things I like about the alignment and opening of our recreational facilities on holidays is because that's when families are off together. And so it's nice for them to be at home, but it also gives them an opportunity to go to someplace and recreate together as a family. And I remember going as a young family with young kids swimming often. And if you're closed on the days that we're all off together, what's the point? So open them up on holidays so that the families can actually go there and use them. And to Councillor Jolly's point, we're debating over $3,000. So anyway.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Bermansky, to close.
Okay, to close on this one, and again, I appreciate the other councillors' comments, and Councillor Broadhead, I do understand your point of view that, family does get together on these other holidays, and they will probably go there on Easter Monday or Boxing Day or Heritage Day, but the likelihood of the other two is pretty slim. And again, it's just trying to be respectful to the staff and to the community as a whole, for those few days a year. And also the facility will be shut down Christmas Day anyhow. So I mean, that would actually allow them to have the shutdown planned so that you don't have to have someone doing the shutdown in between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So I think it's a fair balance. And again, my goal is to be respectful to the community, provide the services, save a little bit of money, and give those hard workers the days off they deserve. That's it. Thank you.
All right, I will call for the vote. Voting's closed. And that motion fails with Councillor Bermansky and Councillor Hughes in favor. All right, back to the main motion, Councillor Jolly. Is there any more questions before I accept her main motion? Seeing none, I'll accept it. Go ahead.
Very briefly, this is to bring our hours in alignment with Service Place. It's actually still fewer hours than we had back in 2021. But you know, this is a new normal, and I'm excited to see the response our public has to our, you know, brand new to us Fountain Park, and to have our community enjoy the pool when they're on holidays. That's all I have.
Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you. I know that there was concerns about, well, we found some tax savings, and so should we reinstate the hours? But I agree with Councillor Jolly on this, that there's sometimes that the cost justifies the means. And we look at what was brought forward in 2021 for cost savings. And we were able to go from a projected set $9 million deficit to $15 million of surplus, which also means that we did many cuts that were not necessary because we had $15 million extra money at the end of the day than what we needed to break even. At that time, we didn't know how bad it would be or how good it would be. And so we were working kind of drastically. But even this year, we're looking at well over $1 million surplus, and we're not even seeing the third or fourth quarter yet. So when I look at this and say, was this actually a necessary cut? In hindsight, especially now, I don't think it's necessary any longer. And so that's why I'll be supporting this. I think that families love to be able to go out on the stat holidays and spend time with their family and be able to do something with them. And, you know, on Boxing Day, you're going stir crazy. Sometimes those kids have had a ton of sugar and you're like, what can I do to burn that energy off? And if you can stick them in the pool for a few hours, they get tired. And you know that a tired child is almost worth its weight in gold if they'll go to sleep easy. So, in that way, just alone, you can get them in and actually enjoy the time and get them out of the house, because sometimes it's too cold. That's it. Thanks.
Councillor Killick.
Yeah, thanks. Just as I said, this is a kind of tough one between cost savings, but versus hours of operation. And I do agree with Councillor Jolly in terms of consistency of message. Facebook constantly is loaded with questions of residents. Is this open? What are the hours? Can I take my kids, et cetera, et cetera. So if it alleviates some of that confusion, opens it up for our community. And when I look at the amount of money that we spent on that beautiful facility, to have it not available and shut down to save a few dollars, it's really unintended. It's a drop in the bucket in terms of savings versus providing the service to our residents and providing some consistency and getting the use out of a beautiful facility. So we should be trying to maximize that facility, even if it means a difference of adding back in 5 days. So I'll be supporting, after listening to both sides of the argument, I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Anything to close, Councillor Jolly?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, I'll call for the vote. Vote is closed, and that passes unanimously. We are on to just the in-camera section, so I need a motion to go in camera.
Sorry, Mayor Herron. Previous to that.
Yeah, announcements, information requests.
We had some questions.
Any questions? Councillor Killick, you were first in line because you submitted them early.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So two simple questions. And this was not contained in the master rate bylaw, so that's why I was asking it as a standalone question. And it was, do we have a fine for parking regular vehicles in the electrical vehicle charging spots? I couldn't find it specifically worded in our fine bylaw. And however, I did read that there is a fine for parking incorrectly in a designated zone. So I wondered, do we need something specific, or is it covered in the traffic bylaw that fines that way?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. As you can see, highlighted very prominently on the screen, we've got our Manager of Policing Services, Aaron Giesbrecht.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Killick. We don't need to make any adjustments to the traffic bylaw. There already is a section in the traffic bylaw for that matter. It's actually under section 23 sub 3 sub P, which is parking in a city parking lot contrary to a traffic control device. So it carries a $80 fine with a $60 early payment rate. The only thing we have to make sure, and I've had some conversations with engineering already, is that we have the right signage put in place so that that section is enforceable.
Okay, great. That's a perfect and simple answer. Thank you. My second question then is, just when I was looking for the particular fine and where it was covered in our bylaws, I noticed that we had bylaw 21/76, and it's so it was created back in 1976, and it very weirdly worded bylaw that says there is a special payment for infractions of $10. And I'm just wondering, maybe through the mayor to administration, if Wedge Services can say, do we actually need that, or is that something that whole bylaw could be gotten rid of, or how?
So through the chair to Councillor Killick, we've started to have preliminary discussions. Given your questions today, we preliminarily believe that perhaps the bylaw is not used any longer and it may be able to be repealed, but we'll take some further looking into that just to make sure. And if that is true, then we will bring forward a repealing bylaw to repeal that one. We don't believe we rely on it for anything. So that's what we will have to have internal discussions about first. And if we can confirm that we don't use it, then there's no point to have it on the books, so to speak, and we will come back to repeal it.
Thank you. Do you need an official IR for that, or just through today's discussion?
We can take that with the discussion today. We're going to go do the work, given the discussion that we've had.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Killick. Anything else? Okay. Do we have any notices of motion or IRs that I need to read it to the record? Okay. Anyone, Councillor Mackay, Councillor Hughes, any questions? Nothing over here? Go ahead, Councillor Broadhead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Fletcher. And if I missed the memo, my apologies, but there's a sign up on Villeneuve Road that says Villeneuve Road will be closed September 9th to 11th. It's already closed at one point. We're just wondering which part is going to be closed for those 2 days.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. I do not know. I'll ask Donnie George to weigh in.
I think excuse me, isn't that associated to the developer doing that little bit of work on the Denison traffic circle?
Ms. George is here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so there's a sign that says Villeneuve Road is going to be closed on September 9th, I believe, to the 11th. And yet it's already closed. So I'm just wondering, I've had questions asked me of which part is going to be closed. People don't understand what that means.
I have to take that as an IR. Sorry, I have to look into that as well.
Okay, fair enough.
Does it need to be an IR? Can we just get a quick little?
I was going to say, given the timelines, we will endeavor obviously to get an answer prior to the time.
Okay.
There's a lot of traffic through that traffic circle, so if it's closed, it should say traffic circle closed or something, because then all of a sudden, I don't know how people get through there, so.
Right.
You just go around and keep going around, keep going around. I think when I made my initial question inquiry about the state of Villeneuve road construction, I think the answer I received back from administration was it was going to open and then close briefly for them to continue that little piece of work that the developer was responsible for around the Denison traffic circle, just in relation to going into Nouveau. I think that was the response that I recall anyways.
No, thank you, Council. We'll confirm and get this back. I apologize. We don't have it in hand.
Councillor Hughes has another question.
Okay, actually, it's my first one, to be fair. Just about the garbage carts, I was just thinking about that. You know, there was a backlog in getting the replacement. How are we at catching up right now? Where are we at with that? Are we still looking at it like a long delay?
Thank you. I'll ask Acting Director of Public Operations to lay in, but I know we have had some additional deliveries.
Sure. I just don't know. And just so you know, I didn't receive any complaints. I just know that a while ago there was complaints. I just don't have an update. So I was just curious where we're at.
And I apologize, seem to be coming up, but again, we'll take that away and I'll provide an
Sure,
answer.
just send us an email back when you get a chance to know. I just was wondering if where we're at with that. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right, that's on the questions that we have that I can see. No hands up. Okay, so now I will get back online and do a motion to go in camera. Councillor Mackay beat you to it.
Well, actually, Councillor Kelly tried to hit his button, but he keeps hitting the wrong one. That council moving camera to have a confidential dialogue with the Chief Administrative Officer pursuant to Section 24(1)(a) of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act.
All right, call for the vote. Voting is closed. That's unanimous. Nothing will be coming out of this one that will require staff or motion. So somebody want to pass the host over to me and I'll take over? Okay.